Okay.
The intro.
Well, welcome to the Bookish Diaries. This week, Megan is interviewing your favorite editor, me, to talk about my business and all things editing. So I'm gonna flip it over to her.
I know this is going to be really exciting, actually, guys, I think, because Kate is awesome. Okay. Okay, what made you originally start your Bitchin' Books editorial?
So originally, I started out with just a Bitchin' Books Instagram, like Bookstagram. And I started that because I had just read the book Slewfoot by Brom, which tells the tale of a woman enacting revenge on this Puritan uh, town that she lives in, and it is so excellent. So if you haven't read it, definitely grab it. And I finished reading it and like needed to talk to someone about it, but I had no readers in my life. And so I was like, fine, I'll just post about it on Instagram and see if I can make friends. And one thing led to another, and I started following indie authors and getting on their ARC lists and started getting to read their books. And um, ARCs are pre-proofed, and so, or like it's, you get them before they've been proofed. And so there's mistakes and stuff, and I was finding those mistakes and was thinking like maybe I'm good at this. So then I decided to take some certifications online through Editorials Freelance Association and Pointers ACES and through my local university here. And one thing grew into the next, and I started Bitchin' Books editorial.
Okay, so how did you come up with the name?
So the name Bitchin' Books for my bookstagram, I originally thought of because I was at a point in my life where I was like, I'm so sick of not being myself, of not feeling like I can say what I want to say. And so when I started my bookstagram, I told myself that I was not allowed to second guess myself. If I wanted to post something, I should just post it. And with that, I decided I've always loved the word bitchin'. Like I grew up, I was born in 93. And so it was past my time, and I wasn't allowed to swear growing up anyway. And so, as a way to reclaim the bitchin' as being something like cool or dope, I decided to name my bookstagram Bitchin' Books. And then when I posted about authors working with me for the first time, I believe it was Courtney Wynn, the author of Vestless, who was in the comments and she said, "Oh my gosh, are you going to call it Bitchin' Books editorial?" And I was like, well, now I am because that is the funnest name I've ever heard.
It really is. Okay, next question. So you specialize in fantasy, epic, high, urban, romantasy, dark romance, sci-fi, supernatural, paranormal. What drew you to those genres specifically?
Well, growing up, I was allowed to read some fantasy, but I mostly read like historical, like King Arthur, Robin Hood type worlds. But I always loved like the quests and stuff. And so as I got older and more removed from the way my parents raised me, I was able to read more actual like fantasy with witches and dragons and sorcerers and all these things. And I just absolutely fell in love. Um, And so for years, I would just read those books and have always felt drawn more to worlds that are outside of our own world, just because if someone is killed in a fantasy world, it doesn't feel like it could happen to me because we're in a different world. And so that's why I really love fantasy and kind of the same like romance and dark romance, while they're not in fantastical worlds, they're still like, I don't know, like
It it's still kind of make
not
believe, right? Like it's
right. It's
not
not
like
like the
real
most
life.
realistic.
Yeah.
Whereas like historical fiction and stuff is like, oh my gosh, we're gonna read about the Great Depression. That's depressing. Not really what I'm looking for here, but is great. Like if you love historical fiction, like that's awesome. It's just not where my heart is. And so I I feel like I have a really good understanding of what makes a good fantasy world, of world building, of like, oh, this doesn't really make sense in terms of the magic system. Like, let's flush that out. And so that's kind of why I started with fantasy as kind of my base main genre to edit, and then kind of filtered out with there with, well, there's like the paranormal. Well, it's not technically fantasy, it's still something that I love. And so, yeah, that's why I have the whole list of genres on there.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we already talked about this a little bit when you were talking about earlier about like the degrees and stuff you got, but so just to get more into your background, it says you have a bachelor's of communication and an ACES editing certificate. How has your journey, including indie, shaped how you approach editing today?
That's a great question. I feel like, let's see, man, I think that for me, one of the things is up until I found editing, I felt like just kind of floating in the ocean, going from one job to another, just mostly customer service based and never really like loving what I was doing. And when I found editing, it was like something clicked and I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. And so I think that having that kind of going on in my head, every edit and every author that I approach, it's almost like a treasure or like a opportunity instead of like work, which is really great. And so I hope that it continues to feel like that as I grow my business because I know that I can get stressed by things and thing stuff. But I also think that just having those certifications and I don't know, like my degree from Eastern Oregon is in communication, but I also just think like it helps me remember like I did this hard thing, I can do this hard thing. And so it's just like a proof of burden. Like I've done this, I know I can do this kind of thing to keep me pushing myself.
Yeah, that's really cool that you got to do something, like reading, like love reading, and then start a business that involves something that you love. Because I know for myself, and I'm sure tons of other people, like finding something like you really love doing is hard, and doing that for a living. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I feel so blessed to have kind of just found myself in this opportunity. So
Yeah.
it's been amazing.
No, that's really good. Um, okay, let's see. Oops. I'm sorry, I just accidentally closed my questions list. Sorry, guys.
No, you're fine.
Um, oh my gosh, how did I just do? Okay. Um, okay, so on your website, you use a lot of warm, fun language. How do you keep the tone of your business both professional and fun genre savvy? I hope I asked that correctly. How I wrote it.
That sounds like a correct question. Um, I think that kind of with the when I started my Instagram, I just kind of stopped worrying about what I've been told my whole life. Growing up, specifically like in high school with writing, uh, my teachers would tell me that I needed to change the way I wrote because my writing sounded like the way that I talked. And I feel like that's what I have on my website is just it's like I said it out loud and just kind of like typed up what I said out loud. And I feel like I'm kind of like a warm, passionate person. And so being able to just kind of like onto the website worked out, I guess.
No, I love that because I know you. And so, like, I know that that's like your personality. But I was like, I gotta get people to be able to like connect that because you are.
Well, thank
You
you.
you are a very warm, loving, fun person. Anyway.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's get into editing process. So it says that, so you list services like vibe check, complimentary, developmental editing, copy and line editing, and proofreading. Could you walk us through what each stage means in your world?
Definitely. So the first step that I encourage any author to do is to get a sample edit done. And that is what my vibe check is. It's merely a initial check to make sure that I feel comfortable working on your work and the author feels comfortable with the edits that I make to their sample. And so I'll have authors send me 1,500 words from somewhere in the middle of their document. And then I always encourage them to go get other samples from other editors because I want them to be able to say like, okay, this editor is maybe doing this style and this editor is kind of picking up on these things and choosing whichever editor they feel the most comfortable with. Because the last thing that I want to do is like have an author work with me because I'm the only one that they could find and they don't really like how I do the editing. And so it's just kind of like this tense, frustrating experience. Whereas if you get a sample size of a couple and then you get to choose who you want to work with, I feel like it alleviates a lot of stress and pressure from the author specifically. And so a vibe check or a sample edit from any editor is so important. From there, when I ask for them to send me the words, I ask what kind of edit they're looking for. And sometimes they don't know, and so I'll just do all of the samples on the edit. But so a developmental edit is what an author will do after their second or third draft. If they feel like they're missing out on some world building or character development, or they just want like another set of eyes to make sure that everything that they're wanting their book to be is there. And so for my developmental edits, I give the author back once I'm finished with it a character analysis of any of the all the main characters, and so kind of what were their motivations are, who how they changed throughout the story, what their arc was like, and then any questions or inconsistencies that I found within their kind of growth. I also returned back a style guide that is just a list of all of the names, places, locations, magical system type things with little notes attached. So that way they have kind of like a glossary of their book at their hands that can go with them through every stage of editing. And then they also get a like just an overall developmental edit report back, which shares what they've done well and larger areas of what they could be working on overall through the story. Maybe something was said early on about guns working some way, but then it's never spoken about again. I would highlight that and be like, this seems really important, but then you never brought it back up again. Is that waiting for book two? Do you want to like leave a few more tidbits? And then I also give them back their manuscript with what I call red line items. It's just questions and inconsistencies at a more micro level, exactly where they are in the document. So that way they can go back through, kind of read the report and change things overall in like a broader sense, but also get those like little nitpicky inconsistencies that can happen. So that's a dev edit. And then I'll return that to the author. They can do their own edits and do whatever they want to implement my reports. And then a line edit takes place after either a developmental edit has been done or after you've gotten your book back from your beta readers. It's something that you want to do after your story is locked. Because a line edit really goes through and works on the beauty of the words. It's making sure that every, other paragraph doesn't start with the word opening and it's going through and making sure that he said, she said, he said, she said isn't at the end of every single dialogue tag, and just kind of like giving more variance to the word usage and the sentence structures and making sure that it keeps the reader kind of like, interested with the way the sentences are structured. And then there's the copy edit, which is the last thing that you want to do before a proofread. A copy edit has the editor going through and looking for all of the grammar, punctuation, making sure, yeah, that's all there and well done. And you definitely don't want to change any of your story after the copy edit because then the editor will just need to go back in and re-edit what you've changed. And then from there it goes to the proofreader, and the proofreader is there to simply just find any little I's that haven't been dotted or T's that haven't been crossed. And then it's ready for readers to read it out into the world.
So, okay, so I have a question. Actually, I have two follow-up questions really quick to that. So the
Sounds
sam
good.
The sample editing, is that something that a lot of other editors do? Because I've seen other editors like post and talk about all of the other stuff, but I've never seen anybody but you do talk about like sample editing.
I have mixed yeah, so I don't know. Going into it, I was like, every single editor should do a sample edit. It should be free. It's silly not to, because in my head, it's almost like someone coming and giving you like a quote to fix your shower. Like you might not go with them, so it sucks to have to pay to do something that's not going to end up being done. And a sample edit doesn't take that much time to where it's worth it for me to give them a free service in the hopes that they'll want to work with me as their editor. I have seen there's one editor online who has a huge following, and she posted about free sample edits, and she said, I don't work for free. And while I respect that, I also feel like my heart is working with indie authors, especially like debut authors. And if I can give them a little bit of, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like make them feel a little bit more safe and secure by giving them a free sample, like that's what I'm going to do. Because
Yeah.
it's easy for me and it doesn't take like too much time that it's something that I would want to stop doing.
And as somebody like I'm not an author or an editor, but because that's something that I've noticed myself too. I haven't seen I mean I think maybe like once I've seen another editor like talk about doing like free sample edits. But to me, like even if they're, well, I know like people who are like traditional published, like a lot of those companies have their own editors and stuff that they use. But for me, like I want to get to like know the person. That's kind of like when like we just had our house remodeled and we went through a couple different contractors and had them come out, and we went with the one that we vibed with the most. And so I just
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that that was a good thing because for me, it would make me feel, because I'm not just gonna like jump in and be like, oh, well, you have like 50 million followers, so I'm just gonna use you. No, because I may not like you that much. I don't know.
Right. And like you don't know how they're going to talk to you inside the document. You don't know how they're going to bring up problems. Connor and I have been like going through and touring wedding venues, and that we don't have to pay for that, but it takes a lot of their time. But we're asking all these questions. We want to know all of the details because we're paying a lot of money, and authors pay a lot of money to get their book edited, and it's like their baby. And so I just I want to give them all of the peace in the world when they work with me that, like, this is who I am as an editor. If you like it, great. If not, there are other editors for you.
Yeah, and I think that that's great. I just wanted to ask about that because I was like, I was like, I've never seen them really talk about it. Okay, my next question, and because this is something I've been seeing a little bit more of, I guess, in books lately. So like what part of the editing, like, and maybe it's like the authors that like want to keep stuff in there, but sometimes I see a lot where they use specific words a lot. And then like you're reading the book and you're like, I don't want to hear this word again. Like
Yep.
like stop using it. So is that like when you go do oh my gosh, no, because I went down a rabbit hole on the other one. The other question.
You're good. That's part of the line edit.
The line edit.
And
That's
so
what I was.
removing that repetition.
Yeah.
Yep. Words like just does not need to be in your document as many times as it is. I'm just letting you know. I'm just letting you know.
I mean, I know
I'm
like
letting you know.
yeah. Well, like I know when I'm talking and I keep just saying it, I say like a lot, but when I'm
Yes.
reading a book, I'm like, I don't want to hear that word 50 million times on the
Hmm. Hmm.
page.
Unless
So
you're writing like a Valley Girl character who's like supposed to be that way, I yeah, I generally will remove them and then make a comment. You can definitely leave this in if this is the vibe that you want for your character, but as a reader, it can get kind of, I don't know, like not mind-boggling, but it just kind of weighs you down and it takes you out of the story.
Yeah. No, it does. And I started seeing that a little bit more and I was like, are people not editing that stuff out anymore? But maybe it's the author's vibe and what the character is going for. Okay. Okay, let's see. Now where was I at? Okay, how do you decide the workflow for a manuscript? Oh wait, no, we just went over that because you just talked about which stage comes first and how many rounds. Well, you didn't say how many rounds, but you said which stage is. So I guess the question would be which stage come first, how many rounds, and how do you manage feedback versus author's voice?
Awesome. Okay, so um really what it comes down to it is once I give the sample edit back to the author, they get to choose what they want. And so sometimes I'll say a developmental hard it, a developmental edit is horribly hard to do a sample of because I only have 1500 words. I can't tell you if you have a lot of inconsistencies with 1500 words. And so I basically just kind of show what the dev edit will look like and let them know what it's for. And so then they can decide, like, oh, I am feeling like I need that, or oh, no, I'm feeling pretty good about this. I've had beta readers in there. Like, I don't need this. The copy and line edit, a lot of times, if authors are on a budget, they'll just do the copy edit, which is totally fine because the copy edit makes it more readable. You get rid of your run-ons, you get rid of your like if there's doubled up words like the or she, how words can kind of get doubled up. And so it helps with the flow. Um and then line editing is really like the extra kind of more fun one that is like if you can't afford it, that's awesome. And I like can highly recommend it. But there's some manuscripts that I get for a sample and their writing is great. There's not a lot of, you know, the structure of the sentences is differing and they're not using the same word. And so then I'll just recommend a copy edit. Um, I think I forgot the rest of your question.
Um, so okay, so it was which stage comes first, which we kind of just talked, and
Mm-hmm.
then how many rounds do you
Yes.
generally have to do, and then managing feedback to the authors.
Yes, thank you. So for a developmental edit, it's just one round, but it's just like a really in-depth, like pulling quotes for the character analysis and kind of like taking notes for myself as to like how things are going. For a copy and line edit, I do 2 rounds. And so like 2 full rounds. I will say that a lot of what's edited gets read like 3 or 4 times. And so the first time I'll go I try and break it up and so that way I'm not doing too much in a day so I don't get like tired. But I'll go through a chapter and kind of just read it silently in my head and make edits as I go. And then I'll wait 1 or 2 and I'll just kind of keep doing that. And then like 2 or 3 days later, I'll start at that first chapter and I'll read it all out loud. And it's it's really nice if I'm working on Google Docs, if an author is working with me, because they'll have cleared my edits. And so then I can go back and I can read it out loud as a reader would read it in a book. And I'll be like, oh, that doesn't read right. Oh, that doesn't. So then I'm able to do that. And then anything that I change, I'll go and reread that paragraph to make sure it makes sense. So a lot of times it's getting read. It's getting read at least twice, but a lot of times it's getting read 3 to 4 times as I'm like finagling sentences and changing things. Um, and then with feedback, that was one of the hardest things for me when I was starting out was like telling someone that what they did was incorrect or that it didn't make sense because I hate conflict. I hate approaching people and being like, this is wrong. Hate it so much. And I just am so grateful for the first authors that I worked with because they were like, be mean, like, give it to me hard. Like, I want to cry. I'm like, okay, I can do this. And so I think I've just, there were days where I'd have to sit in my chair and be like, this is your job. It is your job to point out that this is an error. And so I would force myself to do it. And I've gotten so much more capable of doing it and it doesn't cause me stress anymore. But that was kind of like the hardest part of starting editing was like, oh. It's like, no, this is literally why they're paying you. This is what your job is now.
100% yes, it is. But I know how hard that is. Um, okay, next question. What are common mistakes or blind spots you see in manuscripts from indie authors working in fantasy, romantasy, well, any of the genres really, but yeah.
That's a great question. Um, I don't know if there's anything like consistently across the board. I think in general, like in terms of writing, because every author that I've worked with is so different in like how they approach their book and how they approach their writing style. I think outside of the writing, I would say 75% of the authors that I've worked with have had a horrible editor experience in the past. And so I think really educating new authors on what an editor should do and how they should treat you, and that there's samples available and you should sign a contract, and that, like, your book is your book, so you have the final say. I think that is kind of what I've seen across the board that could really be fixed and hopefully help a lot of people in the long run, because I feel like there's so many scams out there and there's so many too good to be true packages out there that just a package that they're offering, $500 for developmental edit, copy edit, line edit, and a proofread. They're not giving your book the time that it needs. Um, and so I just feel like educating the community more as a whole is like how to find an editor, how to find a good editor, that it's okay to ask questions, is kind of, I guess, what I feel like answers that question.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Okay, here's a kind of good one, which we've kind of, I think, touched on a little bit. How do you balance maintaining the author's voice and ensuring the technical structure quality of the work, especially in genres where world building, magic systems, and or romance tropes play large parts?
Definitely. I think that's a great question. I think that it helps that I don't really see myself as a writer. And so I've never found my writing voice. My writing voice is my speaking voice. And I know that no one really wants to read that tangled mess. And so, um, for me, just getting in there and like giving suggestions of things that they could change. I never say you have to do this, which I think is probably the number one thing of maintaining an author's voice, is like a lot of editors will try and take control and be like, you have to do this. And I will say, hey, CMOS says this, but rules are also meant to be broken. So if you don't like it, you don't have to do it. And like if I'm doing a line edit and they have a lot of, I think it's called gerunds with ing, like opening, talking, slowing down, like if that's how they're starting a lot of their sentences, then I'll kind of like highlight the whole paragraph and I'll say, this has a lot of gerunds that are starting it. A potential rewrite could look like this. And I'll use all of the same words in the sentence, but I'll just move the words around a little bit. And so it's still the author's voice. It's just giving it a little bit more of a change up.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, okay, and sorry guys, I keep looking at my phone because this is where I have the questions at, if you guys are wondering why I'm looking away from the page. Um, okay, next question. Okay, so this is something from, I think I wrote this down correctly, from one of your blog posts, because you do blog posts, correct?
Okay. I do. I started a blog and I haven't actually. I wrote a bunch and they've been coming out weekly, and I should probably check on that.
Okay. So I think if I wrote this down correctly, one of them says, don't and wait until the end, a guide for when to book your editor. You emphasize early editing. At what point in an author's drafting, publishing timeline do you recommend seeing an editor?
Yeah. Okay, so I think that if you're thinking that you want a developmental editor, once you're done with your first draft, start looking for editors, start talking to people because you're going to want to give that over after your second or your third draft. And editors tend to book out. Currently, I'm booked out until April of next year. And so I'm really excited about that. But I also have authors who are coming to me that I would love to work on their book, but I can't because I'm already booked up. And so, if you have an editor that you're excited about, I don't really think it's too early to get on their radar. I would just be like, hey, can I have a sample? This is what I'm working on. This is kind of my timeline. So that way they're on there. If it's a year from now, like they're on your radar. Uh, that being said, I need to be completely honest here. I really like planning. And just a little non-editing tidbit. When Connor and I were talking about our wedding date, I was thinking like we can send out save the dates in January. And he was like, you cannot send out save the dates a year before, like over a year before the wedding, because people are going to be confused about the date. And I was like, oh, there is such a thing as too much planning. And so like within reason, I would say if you're going to be turning your book in 3 to 9 months out, I would start looking for an editor because you never know how quickly they're going to fill up their calendar.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I know we're getting close to time. Okay, let's move to okay, so since we work with oh, wait. I had so many questions and we do not have enough time to really go through all
That's
the
okay.
questions that I wrote down. So I'm trying to skip ahead. Um, okay, so as our podcast, we work with a lot of indie authors. That's something that we both like to focus on. Um, what are the advantages and challenges of working with an editor? Oh, wait, no, I don't like that question. I did not write it down wrong, or I did not write it down right. Scratch that one, guys. Okay, so can you share, and I know that some of us have already know a few from our podcast, but can you share without naming names if confidentiality applies a success story, an author you worked with, um, in like the book, I guess, or books?
Yeah. Um, so I feel like, what do you mean by like success story?
Well, I
Like, I
guess
feel
not.
like they've all gone really well. Like,
No,
I don't have like a horror story.
yeah, I don't know why I wrote it down that way. Just like what are some of the books that you have
Yeah,
edited? And are any of
for
them
sure.
like big name ones that people might know?
For sure. I have not had the chance. Well, okay. So, Courtney Wynn of Vessels was the very first author who ever let me touch her book. And I had posted um, on Instagram saying the first 5 authors who respond to this, I will give you a free edit just to like help grow my business when I was first getting started. And Courtney talked to her already uh, scheduled editor and asked if I could have a chance to go through and do a line edit first. And the editor was so sweet. She was like, absolutely, I'll even give her feedback. And so I got the chance to read Vesselus like the first way through. It was so fun. And her editor gave me feedback, which was so helpful and awesome. And then shortly after, Vesselus was picked up for traditional publishing, and has since changed a bit, but and is so good. So that was one, which is really exciting. And then Stephanie Storm, who was our opening guest, I am her editor, and so I've gotten to work a lot with her. Um, her books are always they're just, oh, they're so good and they're so dark and they're just, oh, I love it. And I love working with her. It's like we have like this little brain melt, which is really fun. And then another one that I had the chance to work on earlier this year was the rebirth of Order, Rebirth of Order by D.D. Williams, which since it's been published, I think has over 100,000 page reads now, in kind of a short time. And so that one was also dark fantasy. Why choose? There's like codes within the book. It's so good. And so yeah, I just love getting to see my authors like post about like readers when they get their hands on them and like their favorite quotes and stuff. It's so fun to be able to like follow along after the edit has finished to see like how other readers love the book as much as I did.
Okay, have you seen anybody share like a quote that they love? And I know that you're not the author, but like a quote from a book and you're like, I edited that. Like I helped form that quote type thing.
I don't know for sure if I have, because like while I remember like the story, I don't know if I remember like, oh, I had to change that for this, or if it was just like perfect as is. But yeah, like just seeing people gushing about the books once they come out is just, it's like, I don't know. It has, I feel like it feels like being a proud aunt or grandma.
I don't know if I could ever edit. I would, I just read stories and like sometimes I find the mistakes like and I see them or like using the words too much, but most of the time I just get engrossed in the story. And like if it's a good story, I'm like, I don't give a shit about the like words misspelled wrong.
Quite honestly, especially like later in the books, a lot of times I will have to just be like, all right, I'm just reading this afternoon. I'll read it because I'm like too invested. And then I'll go through again and do like an editing pass. And then I'll go through again and read it out loud. Because there have been times where I found myself just like, oops, forgot to edit this. It's just been so engrossed that I need to like go back, start from the beginning. And so sometimes it does take me as well. But I could never do what you do. The character art you do and the book covers you've made, insane. So we all have gifts.
I wish, I don't know, maybe I need to rethink my career path and start
You
trying to
have,
do
oh
that
my
more.
gosh. I have a note for after when this is over.
Okay. Um, okay. What is a good, I'm trying to think of a good closing one. I've had way too many questions. I guess we'll just leave it at that fun ending and not ask more because
Sounds good.
I feel like for my other questions, we need to do like a second part to this.
For sure. Well,
Sorry.
for any authors that are listening, I really love answering any questions, being any sort of help that I can be. So if you ever have a question, feel free to email me. My email is bnbeditorial@gmail.com. You can head over to my website, which we'll link below, and my Instagram. So I'm an open book. I would love to work with you. I'd love to help you, even if you don't choose me to be your editor. I'm always here with pom poms. So
Yes. And I know that I'm probably maybe a little bit of a biased opinion since Kate is my friend, but I have attempted to write a book and have worked with her a little bit on that. I just wrote like half of it and then never never got around to finishing it. But she is amazing. And so I'm not trying to be biased, but she is. So I
thank you.
highly recommend. Anyways.
Thank you all so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, and share, and listen to wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh wait. Stop.